influencers are causing, people to have negative body image, like mental health crisis. But actually, has anyone looked and actually spent some time thinking, what's that actually having an impact on the influencers themselves? When you really get to know me, it's like that act is gone. And you just are you.
Is that you? Well, people get lost in the performance, don't they?
Yeah. And that's a lot of people struggle with that in general.
Because if you're performing all day,
so, who are you? And I think now that I've taken a step back from Instagram and starting to think, who am I without it? I'm learning that I actually prefer myself. Just be
who you are.
Who I am.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Foam. It's been a while since we've done any podcasts or anything like that, so yeah, now we're here with Ciandra, my girlfriend, and also social media influencer. So we're going to talk more about social media and the influences on society and just psychology, and it's going to be a really good conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to join, so...
Yeah. And as you can see, the van has evolved quite a bit since our last recording. It's got some lights in here now. We've got like a bed in here. We've got seating, table. So you'll be seeing a lot more podcasts in the van when it's fully done. So yeah, let's just jump.
Let's get started.
Yeah. So let's just start at the beginning. Like, what was your first ever encounters with social media? Like, when did you start come into contact with it? I
think, like everyone, I've always had social media profiles. I remember when I got a laptop when I was 12, like I was straight on Facebook. I know, like, everyone's like, you're not allowed Facebook until you're like 16, but just create a fake age. Everyone does it. And then for me to get into influencing, everyone has a different journey with it. Some people just have an enjoyment with fashion or anything. But for me, I wasn't very well for a year. And when I got out of hospital, I kind of fell into it because I got into beauty pageants. My mum entered me into a beauty pageant. It was something that brought my confidence out. I really always been into clothes and fashion, so it's something that I just wanted to do. And I ended up winning a pageant back in, I think it was 2015. And I had to create more of a professional social media account because of like this newfound title. And then kind of I had it there and I grew it to a level. Got into the world of work after college, and I ended up falling into social media influencing and finding out how to monetize it. Really, it was more of a happy discovery rather than something planned.
So you just kind of got into it.
Yeah, because I realised that you can actually, I think because I worked within sort of corporate marketing, I found that actually I know how to monetize my own social media platform and use it as my own form of marketing. So I think that's how I kind of fell into it.
Awesome, yeah. And then obviously you've grown it over the past few years.
Yeah.
And like we've had many discussions about it nowadays and how the idea of social media has evolved. And I remember when I was like in primary school and stuff like that, I had like MSN, and it was so like just innocent at that time.
Yeah, I think it's the basic fundamental aspect of social media is to stay connected with the world and your peers and family. But now it's a completely different ball game, and I think that's what's scary about it. Is for me, it's a form of manipulation. It can be seen on many levels as a form of manipulation. So, I mean, as we go on, I have a completely different view of what social media is now than I did even 6 months ago.
Do you remember any like clicks and like points of time where you kind of realized that social media like wasn't as positive as, or like isn't like super positive for you?
I think I've always found, and people have always said to me, like, you're addicted to your phone. And I kind of never recognised it because I was like, well, no, I'm doing really well at it. And people, a lot of my peers always said, well, it's like hard work pays off. And it was true, like hard work did pay off. And at my, I'd say, peak points of social media and being an influencer, I've done really well from it. There's no doubt about that, and had some amazing opportunities. But at the toll of my own mental health, I think. I didn't necessarily recognise that because it's like, for me, I've always been like burning the candle at both ends because, and you know, there is no, the thing with being an influencer is then there's no, it's 5 o'clock, let's leave the office.
Yeah, it's constant.
It's the problem with being connected to everyone 24/7, and it's when to turn off. And I think I never used to have that ability to just turn off. Like there'd be there's points where I'd be replying to comments, DMs, invoices at like midnight, 2 a.m, 4 a.m, getting up in the middle of the night and doing it, and thinking, actually, if this was a normal job, potentially I'd have that more restriction on my time and that work-life balance. That being said, you could always say that as a job if you have a work phone. I know when I used to be at work, I took my work phone home. So maybe that's just my mindset. However, I think the pandemic, obviously everyone knows we're in the, you know, the sort of maybe a major turning point for society. For me, I was working on my master's degree, and I was starting to feel that actually being an influencer potentially is a pitfall to my life. So I decided to write about the effects of being an influencer on kind of my mental well-being. And through that, it's called an autoethnography. It's basically a study of yourself, which sounds very superficial and very self-absorbed, which is a criticism of autoethnography. But it was more to draw awareness of how being an influencer is not all free stuff and, you know, money. There is that aspect of it. And I think that effect of being an influencer and the perks actually has a negative impact on the people doing it. So I just wanted to draw awareness of that, and through it, and I think through meeting you and through writing it, it's been really weird 6 months for me, because I've actually discovered, what does it actually bring me? It's not bringing me the happiness I thought it did.
Because like when, for like outsiders that look in at your life and your business, like, oh, you got loads of free stuff, you're working with all these big brands, like you live in this perfect life, as it seems, but like they don't actually think like what's behind it and what's the mental health effects of that. And
I think I've had so many conversations you know, over the years, kind of like, well, what do you do as a job? And they always used to know, oh, she used to be a high flyer at Nestle and doing all of this and that. And then when I said, oh, I'm an influencer now, they're like, oh, that's not a real job. And I kind of like, oh no, it's a step. You know, I always backed it down because I was like, well, maybe it isn't a real job. The term influencer actually is a job, but I don't like that for myself. I don't think that it's fulfilling for me. And I don't like the superficiality of it. At the end of the day, it is a lot of free stuff. It's mind numbing. And I sometimes just think, as much as I think what I found is I used to see the comments of people saying, oh, you look amazing, or where did you get that? It used to be a very big form of affirmation for me and a big self-esteem boost. I think that's probably at points when my mental health was quite low, that I used that kind of fake affirmation or of affirmation through social media as a way to feel better about myself. And I think now, because I'm at like such a good place with my mental health, and I actually know what I can actually do in real life rather than through this fake social media, that it's actually a chore replying to people, and I don't really want it anymore, because I kind of know it's all fake. What I find interesting is, so social media influencers, you get loads of comments and loads of engagement, but a lot of the time the engagement actually is from fellow influencers. So therefore, in my head, I'm like, well, actually, what credit and what impact am I actually having to make people buy the products? That's my goal. I'm trying to promote products that brands send me to other people. But how far is that reach? And that's what my view is now. Because everyone is an influencer. What?
Are you just selling to other influencers?
Yeah.
Or like, are you just talking to the choir, basically?
But the argument there is everyone an influencer? That's the thing. Because influencers, everyone wants to be an influencer. I have had people going, how do you grow so big? How do you become an influencer? Like, I want to be an influencer. I want your life. And I'm like, well, everyone wants to be one, and everyone's starting a blog, everyone's starting an Instagram, everyone wants this perfect life. So actually, I don't really have that much clout anymore. So therefore, I want to go far away from it as possible.
Yeah.
Something that actually helps people. I'm not saying social media is necessarily something I want to remove from my life, far from. It's just what I do with social media.
Yeah. And I think that's the key question, really. It's like, social media is like has its uses. It massively, like, you can massively impact a lot of people's lives. You can touch people. You have that reach because everybody has a phone. Like, and you can get your message out there. And that's also the damaging aspect of it. Because anybody can spread their message, whether that be a negative, manipulative, like anybody can do it. So like you kind of get, it's just trying to use it in the right way, which a lot of people aren't mindful of because we haven't ever learned how to like use social media in a mindful way. We just kind of use it. It's like a social experiment. People just like go like, oh, just post this stuff, this, and it's like tapping into this like basic human psychology, but it's we haven't actually experimented on it, and like, there hasn't been tests. There is starting to come like
there's studies and stuff, but there's studies on the negative impacts of social media. There's a lot of it, and there has been a lot that I looked at through for my dissertation. The interesting thing is, and why I did my dissertation, was there's no research done on the effects of actually being a social media influencer on the influencer themselves. It's all, influencers are causing, people to have negative body image, like mental health crisis. But actually, has anyone looked and actually spent some time thinking, what's that actually having an impact on the influencers themselves? Okay, it's a choice, but everyone has a choice to use social media. Everyone can delete their apps on their phone. So, okay, there is some maybe criticism with influencers, like, you know what, you need to be mindful of what you post. And yes, I've always been mindful of what I post. I'm very, very anti-diet products. Like, I've always been that way. I don't really overly edit my images. Maybe I'd change the lighting, but I've never used filters. I've never really manipulated the way I look, purely for the fact that I can't be a cause of another person potentially thinking I'm not good enough. But I still have that big thing in my head, like, I'm posting all this stuff. What impact is that going to have on somebody looking at me thinking I need her life? Because at the end of the day, nobody sees me when, I'm just chilling at home with my onesie on and my glasses on, like, or just doing my normal life. It is a perfected image of myself. I think we've had that conversation between us. It's like, being an influencer has never, ever been part of our relationship anyway. And I think, and that's what I wanted. Yeah. And I have that big, and I've said that to a lot before, is like, people view you as, oh, she must think she's better than everyone else. Or, oh my God, she's a celebrity. Or, oh my God, like, she's got so many followers, like, she must have... Well, it's not me. Yeah. You can't see my personality through my images.
That's what I thought when I met you as well, because, like, I told you, like, I think you asked me if I had looked at your Instagram before. Yeah. And I hadn't. No. Because I thought, like, I just wanted to meet the person. Yeah. You said that you're an influencer, but I was like it's a job. Yeah. It's like, you don't judge people based on what they do. And, I just based you off your personality and just who you are. And that's it. Like, that's
what it's always been.
Yeah, that's what you should do. Like, not base somebody off like this preconceived view of that perfect self that they're showing and spreading to the world is actually like intimately looking at somebody and trying to see like who they actually are, and you can't see that through that.
But I think you're quite rare on that sense.
Have you had any experiences when people have like had that kind of view of you before?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And then they meet me and they're like, "Oh, you're so down to earth," and I'm like, "Well, why wouldn't I be?" But I get it. Like, okay, so you have 100,000 followers on Instagram, and you've got this like, you know, preconceived perfect image of yourself. Let's say you're a fashion or a fitness blogger. I'd think, oh my God, like, he's not going to like bat an eyelid at me because he's this jet setting, he thinks he's better than everyone else. And I have that view being an influencer, and I think, actually, what view am I giving to the world? And do I want that view? Because actually, as much as I might come across on my Instagram as she must be very obsessed with herself, she must love attention, and she must not care about anyone else, I don't want to have that view of it anymore, because it couldn't be further from the truth. And that's what I don't like. And actually, I think my decisions in my life has been okay. So I left that high-flying career at 19 because it didn't make me happy. I went travelling. That made me happy. I met people. I volunteered in an orphanage. Like, I did things that actually meant something. Okay, I managed to grow my Instagram and monetize it. More of the fact that it was kind of all I had to make money. It's always been something that I've never really taken that seriously. When I took it seriously is when the dips in my mental health came, because I started putting too much emphasis on actually what likes meant about myself. And I think that's a damaging thing as well for influencers, is you base your self-worth around a number of likes you get on a post. I mean, Christ, like, how negative is that? Somebody...
I think the problem with that is that it is so temperamental, and like when your likes go up, then you're really happy, and then your likes go down and you're really sad. They can't be constant.
And think about the effect on your brain chemistry. It's like a cycle, and it's like you get the adrenaline rush of like when you get loads of likes and think, oh my God, like that post went really well. And then it does the opposite. And then you start thinking, and then you start comparing yourself to other people. And like, I've had points, such low points with it. And I've actually just been there for hours scrolling at other influencers and thinking, why am I not as good as them? And I just thought, that is such wasted energy. Like, I've got so much that I want to give to the world. I spent hours just comparing myself to people that have just perfected an image of themselves. Why?
Yeah.
But I suppose when you're caught up in it, you can't really get out of it.
Yeah. When you're in that world, you're just on the cycle as well yourself.
Yeah.
Like, because once you get into it and you've got like money coming in, you're just kind of like, okay, but maybe I should stick with it. There's like an incentive to keep on going, but you don't actually see the
and I think at the minute it's what I'm in, that really weird stage of what do I actually want to fulfill with my life. And I've always been like not like everyone else in regards to, if somebody tells me to go one route, I normally go the other one and look at what actually makes me happy. I don't think my Instagram, the way it is, being a fashion blogger, makes me happy. And actually, I don't think it's adding anything to society or benefiting society in any way. I've got a lot of ideas of where I want to take my social media. It is staying as it is for now until I get that route set up. And when I have, I won't be a fashion blogger anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's not what I want to do with my life. I love clothes, but I also don't want to be adding to the fast fashion movement, which I am. And I can't deny that. I'm not, I'm guilty of that, as we all are, I think, unless you're very conscious on the way that you shop. We live in an overconsumption, state, and I'm party to that. And I'm actually manipulating people to buy things they probably don't need because I'm being paid to do it. And that is it's a very hard thing to try and get your head around. I have to live, so I'm manipulating you to buy something. Yeah. Do I actually want that? Would I rather just go to work, come home and not think about it? No. I'd rather do something to help people, and that is where my head's at. I'm sure a lot of other influencers might have a different view. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's just me. I think that's where potentially I'd like to do another study and look at the impacts for wider influencers. Mm-hmm. Because at the moment, I'm one of the first who've actually kind of done a study on it. Yeah,
it's really interesting. And that's what I love about you, really, because you're like not like a normal influencer. Like I think you are very conscientious of like the effect that it's having on the world and like on people's mental health, and like just figuring out what you want to do from now and really trying to help people is like a great route to be on, and like being like a trailblazer almost for influencers.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got ideas of potential. I think if I got to a point where I have another career route, like obviously, like I'm looking down the counselling route, actually looking at how people's mental health is affecting how to help them in general, not necessarily because of social media, but it could be that. Therefore, I think when I have that route and that new path, I want to use my social media to bring awareness of kind of, let's end the kind of influencer game. Because it is a game. The algorithm's a game, social media's a game. And it's whether you win the game or not. And that's what I always thought. It's staying on top.
This game is mass competitive. Like, it's a massively competitive world. Like, everybody wants more likes than the other person, and like it's a very primal almost, because like everybody wants to be on top. Everybody wants to be the top dog, and like,
who are the top influencers? And at a point, I was a top influencer, and I mean, some people potentially would still look at me and think, "Oh my god, like she's still doing really well." I'm not doing badly, but I'm not doing as well as I used to.
Yeah,
I've taken that on the head. I don't really give one anymore. More for the fact that I can see my life without it.
Yeah.
But that's where I am.
Yeah. I feel sorry for people that kind of do get completely engrossed by it, and like people that can't see through it like you do. Like...
And I did. There was points where, I think I was talking to my mum only yesterday actually. She said, you're really easy to live with, Ciandra, but not when you're like on one of these anxiety compare yourself modes. Because I've had points where I'd like break down in tears and think, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Because I'd just be locked to my phone. And you've got to bear in mind as well, like you get some hate from being an influencer, get negative comments. And I think I've always been aware that, I think I wrote that in my dissertation, is I don't know whether my impact of being an influence on my mental health is due to my pre-existing mental health condition, which is based on low self-esteem. Okay, I'm aware of that. However, is it causing that for general people who may not have suffered with their mental health? I think yes, purely based on the stats in general of society, and mental health is rising because of the introduction of social media. So I think there's two streams there. I don't think my job role actually is doing any benefits to me as a person because I've come so far with my mental health. But at the same time, I do think it is causing people to have low mental health, influencers and social media users in general. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah. So where do you think we can go from here then with the social media? And do you think we can make it like a positive platform where like we have influencers? Like we're seeing more and more people like Jay Shetty, for an example, like that are influencers but are portraying this like wisdom movement and producing content that really does help with mental health issues and really does actually help people. I think, is that a way for us to kind of use these platforms for good And how do we kind of reduce the amount of negativity that we have on these platforms, do you think?
I think what just came into my head is there is a lot of influences and a lot of people rising up against it, body positive movements, fitness movements. The problem is when one person has a voice and it's their opinion, then it's tunnel visioned. I think when somebody has a voice, and I think freedom of speech is a very big thing, but it can get, again, quite competitive. And I just think comparison in general and that extreme shouting and global reach of a message can actually cause a lot more harm. It's a hard one because I'm like, I don't want anyone to limit their creativity, their voice, their vision, their movement. But it's when it's done on a mass scale and it has mass reach, then it causes issues with, are people going to start saying that's wrong? Because everyone has their own opinion. Politics, what's right about disease, vaccines, COVID, body positivity, mental health, eating disorder. Like, everyone has their own view. And because the world is overpopulated and because there is social media, it gives about 1 billion streams of people just to have these, like, their own voice. And that's great, but it's also quite negative.
Massively. I think it does, like, massively reflect what's going on in society as well. The amount of fear that we have in society nowadays is massively... I think it's like giving a megaphone to those people that do have massive fear and massive levels of mental health problems. These people that do really struggle and are like the most negative parts of society now have this massive platform that they can just spout their politics, and like anybody can. And that's bound, like, even though it's amazing that anybody can share their opinions, it's also really damaging because you get like these range of opinions that are negative as well. And
I think as well, like, it also gives avenues for the most vulnerable to seek out things. Like, I remember back in the day when I was ill, I used to go on Tumblr. Like, that's how I actually still friends with some people that I met on Tumblr, which is one positive. However, I looked at, it was called at that time, and it was called like pro-Anna sites, and they're like pro-eating disorders, and that is people basically who are probably also really suffering with their mental health, telling you how to get ill. But it gives you, these things are meant to be regulated, but you can't control what's on the internet.
No.
That's the problem with the internet. The internet is an incredible thing, but it gives rise to, you know, child abuse, drug culture, abuse in general, like, but the social media, like, as much as you can regulate a lot of it, you can't regulate all of it. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be. I mean, I one day want to have, you know, my own kids, and I fear that they're going to grow up in a society which is worse than potentially I grew up in. You know, we were the first generation to have social media. We can now seeing the negative impacts of that. Do I want my kids to grow up in a society which is grounding and lets them be kids, or do I just, you know?
Want them to, they're going to be in the same world, but maybe even worse, where they're just massively dependent on this
drug. It's a drug.
It's a drug. Like, and
I used it as a drug for making myself feel better. Why can't we make ourselves feel better through... Doesn't necessarily mean you need people to tell you look beautiful all the time. Far from. It's not gaining other people's recognition. That's when it's bad. You should just learn to love yourself. And okay, that's a really hard thing to do, and not everyone can do it. And okay, that's really sad. And I think we're all learning to just love the versions of ourselves that the best. But I think that's what I want to do. I don't want to have this thing that could potentially one day just go, and then what am I left with?
Yeah. And I think people are using that as an avenue. Like, they see social media and they see it as a way for them to find themselves and be the best them possible. But it's a total illusion. because they think, oh, this is me, I'm this person, I am my Instagram account.
Yeah.
I have all these followers, I have loads of friends. But then when they're on their own, or when they don't have the phone for a day, they're like, who the hell am I?
And that is something that I can tell you about being an influencer. It's actually quite a lonely job, because you spend your time, most of the time, sat in your room on your phone. And then you think, actually, what am I doing? I've had that point in my life, and I'm like, whenever I've been travelling and I've been just sat on my phone because I can't stop working. I've had so many of my friends that I've met travelling and just go, just turn off your phone. But I say, oh, I can't, because then I'll start losing money. I'll start losing engagement. Crap, now I don't care. Like, I'll just turn off my phone for hours, or just not go on it as much. And okay, that's actually something I've only really discovered over the last 3 months through writing my dissertation, through connections that I've made. Like, but I'm learning that life's actually a lot better, and I feel so much lighter without it. I think speaking and writing and learning is so important.
Massively. And I think it's amazing that you're starting to see that and kind of like emerge on the other side of it almost. And we've talked a lot about spirituality.
Yeah.
Do you think it's helped with your spirituality and your spiritual growth?
I think a lot, and I know that you use social media in a way to find videos and to look at positive quotes. I actually have never really done that, and it's something actually I don't know if I should. You know, I that's just something I've not done. I think growing up in such a spiritual family, I've kind of had the avenues to find spirituality just organically or through connections. But then there is things to say about whether I use social media to find my spirituality, and use my social media platforms as a way to gain my inner, my inner self. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of been my kind of direction, like say with foam, and because me and Matt have been having conversations about this for forever. Like, is social media good for me? And like, is it just presenting like this illusion of myself, and like that I don't actually feel myself?
Yeah.
And like the thing that I'm trying to discover, which is I've had a lot of conflicts and cognitive dissonance with social media, is because I think it is a really good tool.
Yeah. And we've talked about that as well.
Yeah.
It's like, I've asked you, would you delete your social media? And even this morning you were like, oh, I haven't been on my own Instagram in ages. I've just been on the foam Instagram.
Yeah.
But then it's like, if you completely remove yourself from these platforms, you're actually more disconnected with the world. And that's the fear.
I think that I am scared that, like, I mean, I think it is a fear that you're not connected with people and stuff like that. But
there's ways to be connected.
I think the real people in your life would call you, or would give you a text or something. And
that's something to say as well, because we have, or because I'm an influencer, I've had so many people that have come back in my life and gone, oh, I miss you so much, Ciandra. Like, I'd love to, but I'm like, you have been in my life for years, and now that you see that I'm this top flying influencer with loads of followers, you want to come back in my life. And I'm thinking, that's superficial. And the real people have just stuck by me, no matter whether I've had no followers, no social media, to having it, you know? And actually, the friends I'm really lucky to have such amazing friends, but they know me. They'll take a picture for me if I ask, but social media doesn't even come into the friendship. And that is what I've always had. But I would say I'm quite rare in being an influencer in that aspect.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think one scary thing that I'm kind of worried about with social media is that I feel like with like Twitter and all these social media platforms, like people are sharing their own version of the truth and these skewed versions of the truth. And one question that I'm really interested in looking at, and especially on the phone platform, is like to strive for the truth. But nowadays, like, it feels like the waters have just got really muddy with all this disinformation and fake news and everything like that. It's kind of scary to think of.
Yeah, and it's like this morning when we were, I wanted to know the truth of sweeteners, how they affect your body, and I was like, I'll watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And okay, like, you were like, but you don't know what you're watching is true. You don't know what you're being told is true. And I think because there is so much information, you don't know what to believe, and then you start questioning everything. And I think that is the scary thing, is because there is so much information. Is what do you deem as truth?
I mean, it comes back to
trust.
Yeah, and there's so many opinion leaders nowadays. Like, everybody's like a leader in something. Or like, if you type in, I don't know, like woodwork, you're gonna find like 100 leaders in like woodwork. Like, and we've got all these different like different platforms for
there's too many options. That's the thing. We're in a society where there is too many options. It's limitless rather than, restrictive. And I think that's the issue and the positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a major plus being able to have like endless versions or like endless knowledge on the internet, but it also has a lot of, it also what's the word, it kind of waters down the truth, because you don't actually know what's really true. Like, you go on Wikipedia.
Yeah, and like, anyone can write that.
Anybody can write that.
That's the thing with being an influencer. I could say, if I wanted to, this toothbrush is the best toothbrush that I've ever used in my life, but I could have not even used it once.
Yeah.
And that is a drawback, because our influencers all just being paid to say something's great and not actually. And a lot of time, probably that is a yes.
Yeah.
Do I feel guilty of that? Yes, purely for the fact that that's what I don't really want, that kind of guilt in my head anymore. Like, I'm telling people to buy things when I really don't want to buy it myself. Is that right? No. Is society right? No. But do I want to be party of that? No.
Yeah.
So
I think it is a societal problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's massive. Like, everything's built for consumption nowadays. Like, everybody needs to sell stuff. So, like, using influencers is a great way, because it's like a personalized.
Yeah.
Like, when you follow an influencer, you follow them for their
identity. And I was just going to say that identity formation. You have this. There's Giddens did a lot of studies on identity. There's like front stage behaviour and backstage behaviour. Everyone has it, no matter whether they're an influencer or not. So your backstage behaviour is who you really are at home, with the people that know you. Front stage behaviour is potentially when you're at work or in a group which you don't necessarily feel comfortable of. The problem with Instagram and influencers is that's magnified and like on a massive scale. So this front stage behaviour is everything that you choose to portray of yourself, a perfect identity, because you can manipulate yourself to be the best version of yourself. Whereas in your backstage, that could be when you're really anxious or a completely different person. I think that is the scary thing about it, is because you can completely change your identity online through offline. That is where there's dodgy things with like stories of like, even like internet dating, where people portray themselves like catfishing.
Yeah.
But then you can have that in real life in influencers as well.
Yeah.
The overly edited images actually the real person. What
can you trust nowadays? Like, when somebody says, "Oh, I love this product," you can't do it anymore. Like, you can't. So when you're reading your reviews, I'm a big one for looking at Trustpilot. Real people, but are they real people? See, that's the thing. You can't you can never know. There's bots. There's people that people are paid to give good reviews. So therefore, if you start thinking of all of this, like, I'm paid to give good reviews of products, okay,
And a lot of the time, I really like clothes and the things that people send me. Like this dress, for instance, I really like it. And I'd probably tell you, I really like this dress, you should go buy it too. However, there is a lot of things that I've been sent in the past where potentially I'd be like not 100% on, but because I'm so restricted in regards to my brand guidelines and I'm fed a set of restrictions of what I'm allowed to say about it, is that the truth? No.
I mean, do you get given like a script?
That's
sometimes?
The thing. Brand guidelines, depending on the post, are extremely restricting and creatively restricting as well. Like, I can't take a picture of potentially what I would want to because this lighting needs to be in it. These angle needs to be in it. You need your hair like this. You need to look like this. And it's like, okay, but where's the freedom there?
And where's your authenticity? Because at that point, you're almost like a puppet for the marketer. Yeah. And their goal is to get them to get the person to buy the product. But is that coming from a place of...
Authenticity is very important, and it's a section that I wrote in my dissertation. Authenticity, being an influencer, it's hard to remain authentic at all times. It just is. And I don't think that's necessarily, what
I think it's impossible, because it's impossible to be authentic online. Well, like, it's almost impossible because even, like, us talking now, this isn't how we normally talk in real life.
No, and like there is, we would normally talk in real life. We'd be sat on the sofa just with a cup of tea, just chatting. Yeah. And when you're put into a situation, you do change. Like, just then I just said, like, you can completely change your kind of like the way that you speak, because you can't be the same person, the same version of yourself at all times. That's not possible. You get put into different situations. You're at work, you're with formal guests or something. You can't just be who you really are all the time. It's very hard. Yeah. But I think it's within reason to remain authentic.
It's a skill, though, I think, to some extent, to be that. It's almost like a communicative chameleon, I think of it as. And I think you're very much that. Like, in different situations, you can play an act to kind of, like, communicate with this person in the most effective way. Yeah,
I do pick up on situations and people's moods and the way that they communicate with me, and then change the way I communicate with them, which to an extent is why it's helped me in the world of work. But then I look at myself sometimes and think, why do I do it? And maybe it's because of being an influencer. I've learned how to put on an act. I mean, but that, when you really get to know me, it's like that act is gone. And you just are you.
Just are you. But people get lost in the performance, don't they?
Yeah. And that's, a lot of people struggle with that in general.
Because if you're performing all day...
Who are you? And I think now that I've taken a step back from Instagram and starting to think, who am I without it? I'm learning that I actually prefer myself. Just
for who you are.
Who I am. So, yeah.
It's amazing. Like, that journey. And, like, everybody obviously is trying to find out who they are. Well, I think these tools and these things, like, are making it, like, a lot harder for younger people, especially in the formative years when they're, like, teenagers and going on, like, 15, 16, 17. That's when you really need to kind of bed deep into who you are, and you're really trying to figure it out. And I feel like it's kind of misguiding a lot of people, I think. And I don't know how this would work, but I had an idea with how we can, like, improve it. I don't know how you think about it, but I think maybe, I don't even know if they do it now, because they definitely didn't do it when I was at school. But I think there definitely needs be some education, some, like, course in, like, high school, college, where they teach you about social media, teach you how to use social media, like, not use it, and teach them how
to not be obsessed with it.
Yeah, and make it, so teach them how not to make it their whole identity. like teach them how to know themselves.
I think, and I mean, I've been lucky to when I went to a meditation-based high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky to that respect because we learn to look within ourselves as part of the curriculum. But I do think, and I think schools are taking on mindfulness and more spirituality aspects. I do think we should be told how to look within ourselves more than looking outwardly for this self-fulfilling
yeah, because
affection.
I don't feel like that real fulfillment is outside us. Like, it's not in our external, like buying watches, buying cars. Like, that's not where real fulfillment is and where we really find who we are. I think the only way that you really do find that is when you look within yourself and you do the hard work of journaling your thoughts, or like doing meditation regularly. That's when you really start becoming conscious. I think that's why you are quite conscientious, and maybe more conscientious than like other influences, because you do have that
spiritual grounding, I think. And I'm really as much as we've had talks about the way that I've learned spirituality, and potentially it's been more of not my own choice, but I think having that spiritual grounding, I'm really pleased, and I'm really appreciative of. But like I said, not everyone chooses to take the route of spirituality or looking within themselves or not consuming. Everyone has the freedom to do whatever makes them happy.
Mm-hmm.
I just personally think we are being told what makes us happy in today's world, and not actually looking at the things that actually mean most, as in kindness, friendship, family, love. And love is a big one. And that's not just love with a romantic partner, it's love in general. It's love for ourselves without fake affirmation.
I mean, what's your view on love? Like, what do you view love as? I
think love has a lot of grounding. Like, I think love is part of who we are as beings. I think we all need love. We all hold love, but I think some people are scared of it. Love is not just something that you show to a romantic partner, to your family. Love is about caring for your home, your well-being, your temple, in a way, like everything that. And love is just in the world, but it's been lost in this negative society, I think.
I mean, like, we've talked a bit about like love, and one really interesting, like, I've started to have more of a perspective on love and what love actually is, and I think now my perspective is that love actually comes from you. It comes from yourself. Love is not something that you give to another person. You may give like compliments and like say nice things to another person, but that's not giving love. Like, you can't give or receive it. And once it becomes a transaction, that's when you lose sight of what it is, because then you're like, okay, I'm in debt of love. You need to give me more love. You need to give me more. And
that goes back to Instagram and people viewing likes as love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's transactional.
Yeah, because they don't have the love for themselves.
And I'm very open to the fact that I used Instagram as a transactional love for a very long time. And I'm open to saying that. There's nothing, I think I'm aware of that, and that's probably why now I've worked so much on actually loving myself throughout the last 6 months and who I am as a person, without images, without social media, without my phone, just sitting with myself and sitting with my thoughts and thinking, actually, I'm an okay person.
Yeah.
I think that's gains more credit than gaining this transactional love from something that doesn't actually mean anything.
Gaining likes and like hearts and on Instagram. What is that? I think a lot of it is very linked into the psyche. And like the developers and the designers of these apps, they chose the love heart for the reason. When you click double tap on an Instagram post, they did that because a lot of the people that are using it don't have love in their life, self-love. So when you see a love heart come up on the screen, you just,
I'm loved.
I'm loved. Which is...
It's so sad and it's so detrimental. And I actually spend very little time going through my feed and liking people's posts these days. Not because I don't care, but it's more that I've just lost motivation with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I don't think... It's a chore now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and some jobs are chores, but I've always been that sort of person in life. Don't do anything you don't love. So that's kind of where my head is at now.
Mm-hmm. Something more meaningful.
Meaningful.
Because I don't think
there
there's
is a
too
lack
much
of meaning in life at the moment. I think everyone's aware of that.
Especially in Instagram and stuff. Like, I don't feel like there is... Like, it's transparent. It's like... It's nothing. It's like when you get a like, it doesn't... Someone come out the screen and give you a hug. It's like just an image on a screen. It's your imagination. It's tapping into your brain in a certain way that is kind of giving you the stimulus, which doesn't actually give you anything. It doesn't have that love. It doesn't have that attention that like real love actually gives you. And like when you give your attention to somebody, that's when you feel love yourself.
Yeah.
That's real love.
Yeah.
I feel like when somebody loves themselves and then they look at somebody and then they can feel that and then feel it in themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's real love. I think like, and one book that you're reading at the minute, the Khalil Gibran book, The Prophet. He has an amazing view on relationships and love, and he views a relationship as 2 pillars, and like 2 pillars need to be strong first, and then like filled with love, each really, really strong, and then on the top you build the structure, which is the relationship, and from that flows everything. That's the connection.
And I think that goes into not just romantic relationships, but relationships with friends.
Everything.
And relationships with people in general. And I think that's where Instagram and influencers, you can't have that relationship. Everyone thinks they know an influencer, but you don't. You know an identity on a screen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I think it's amazing. Like,
I think there is changes that can come.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, myself, there will be a lot of changes over the next year, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure of it. And when I normally get something in my head, I carry on with it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that there will be societal changes with social media. I do think there is more awareness. I just think there should be more done.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why I wrote my dissertation. That's why I want to get it published.
Mm.
I want to do something to really raise awareness
mm-hmm.
of the negative effects on influencers themselves. Just to kind of give that societal awareness of it and to change things, really.
What do you think of the education side of it? Do you think
that's why there is no education, we need
some
education on social media,
mm-hmm.
on the negative effects of it, but also that potentially not every little girl shouldn't want to be the next big YouTube and social media star.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to wanting to be things that, I think society's changed. When I was little, it was like, I wanted to be a hairdresser, and then I wanted to be a brain surgeon, and then I wanted, we had such goals, and now people are viewing, and that's great that people want to be computer designers but social media stars, it's quite negative for young kids, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of young kids, they see like YouTubers and they're just like, I want to be a YouTuber now, but they don't actually know what comes with
it entails. And I think there needs to be more awareness on that, 100%.
Do you see yourself going forward as one of those people that puts more awareness on it?
Definitely. I think, like I said before, once I've got my new kind of route within my life that gives me some stability,
mm-hmm.
that's when I'm going to go full force on potentially, showing some positive change with influencers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing we actually do really need with social media and something along with education, like from influencers, I think, and from regular education institutions. I think we also need some kind of regulation with the companies themselves, like the Twitters and the Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because that's the source. That's where all this brainwashing and material comes from. Like, how do we... I mean, it's so hard to regulate a company like that because they're so big now. They've got power in governments, they've got politics, like, they've got power everywhere. Like, how do we actually reduce their power to make these decisions that affect, like, a wide range of people, like, not, like, the people that are, like, suffering day to day, like, the people that are consuming content on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, but also, like you, like the influencer. How can you make that more fulfilling for them?
Yeah. And
how can we do that in a way that doesn't promote these mental health issues? And like, that's...
And I think that's conversations that I think we can't have. I think it's something we can have them, but I think there really needs to be a big societal shift. It's going to take a lot of work. But it's possible. It's whether everyone's on board for it. I think that's the thing that I would say, kind of, that I would kind of end on, is there is so much scope for influencers to change and be more authentic, but it's whether that is something that not one person can do it on their own. It's got to be a societal shift.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll probably end it there. We're coming up to an hour now, so yeah, thank you for coming on.
It's all right. I'm really pleased to kind of share a bit of my awareness of what it's like to be an influencer, and kind of coming from an influencer, not being all...
Yeah.
You know, it's good to get a different side of the story, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting to dive deep into the different issues, because you don't normally see or like
hear from it, talk about it,
because
in a daily.
There's few influencers that
I suppose that are
really
open
about it. So it's nice for you to kind of be really open with it. But yeah, thank you for listening anyway. If you're on Spotify and Apple Music, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube as well if you're watching this. So yeah, we'll see you next time anyway. See you.
Which one?
The surface.
Oh, it's my penis.
This is on camera.
It's recording. That's nice.
I like that.
Nice. Up close and personal.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Fucking hell, man. Gonna just see my penis. Right.
Oh, that's gonna be funny.